Dr. Chris Thornberg, thank you for doing this little video chat with me today. Appreciate it. I think that there's a lot of people would love to hear your take on obviously what's going on right now and some of the funding aspects that are coming forward. So you had a great little take last Friday on our phone conversation with the county, and I'd love to kind of hear your take on what's going on right now in our current situation.
Absolutely. Appreciate being here, Patrick. And, big picture first. Obviously, for those who've seen the UCR presentations we've been giving over the last few years, for the most part, we've been fairly dismissive of a lot of the hysteria out there, right? For example, 14 months ago, the markets were down 20%. Everybody was afraid of a recession driven by a Chinese trade war, driven by inflation, driven by a collapsing real estate bubble. And back then we said, look, that's crazy talk. And of course, there's some short-term disruptions and things are going to go. And we were more or less right with that. And in fact, we've been fairly positive on the economy for a long time. Now, the last month, we have seen a hit to the U.S. economy that's truly unprecedented. I mean, there's no doubt for us at UC Riverside, at the center, we look at this as the worst negative shock to our economy in the last decade. I mean, it actually is the real deal. This is a scary thing happening right now. But I will also say this: as much as this is a real shock, it's a scary shock, the level of hysteria we're hearing out there right now has been ratcheted up to the same proportion.
Yeah.
And while we have to appreciate that there's no doubt that there's going to be some harm caused as we work very hard to get rid of this pandemic, at the same time, the kind of shrieking calls of a Great Recession or something even worse, to us, it doesn't add up. It's again, it really over the top hysteria and not focusing on what's really going on.
Right.
And to explain that, let me back up for just a second, because what's happening right now is completely different than what happened during the Great Recession. In some levels, worse. In some levels, better. On the worst part, I mean, look, you saw the numbers last week with the initial claims for unemployment insurance coming in at well over 3 million. We've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst week ever was not even close to 1 million. And we quadrupled that number. That's scary, no doubt about it. Second quarter GDP, negative 10%, negative 15%, negative 8%, who knows? It's going to be a big negative. We know that. So the optics, the metrics, people are going to look at these statistics and go, holy cow, this is scary stuff. But where everything kind of breaks down in terms of this Great Recession type model people are using is understanding that these problems are not being driven by anything fundamentally wrong in the U.S. economy.
Right.
These issues are being driven specifically by public health mandates. We're the ones putting a constriction on an otherwise healthy economy in order to try and prevent this virus from spreading any farther than it's going to, right?
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Now contrast that to what happened in the lead up to the Great Recession. The Great Recession began after the great subprime credit bubble of the previous 4 or 5 years finally started to collapse. When that started to collapse, the U.S. economy was highly out of whack. We had a massive real estate bubble characterized by a huge amount of borrowing, a huge amount of buying, a huge amount of building. We had consumers that were overspending because they thought 15% price appreciation and free credit was just going to be the new future, right? And so people stopped saving. It was a crazy time. And when everything started to fall apart, millions of jobs were simply lost. And by lost, well, I mean that they were never coming back. You know, in 2019, construction jobs in the U.S. were still below where they were back at the beginning of 2007. Think about that.
Right.
We've never recovered to where we were in construction. Now, when millions of jobs in construction, real estate, finance are simply lost, those people have to go out. They have to find new careers. They have to learn new skills. They have to build a new occupational pathway to their future. That is a long, hard process. And the economy had a tough time dealing with it. And it wasn't just the 6 quarters of the recession itself. I mean, the economic problems, the heightened level of unemployment went on for years. It was a bad cycle.
Right.
Now, today, as many jobs as are being right now lost in a technical sense, we also have to appreciate they're not lost in an economic sense.
Right.
Look, people are going to go out and eat again. People are going to go back to Disneyland. They're going to spend all the money they're being prohibited from spending right now.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do, there's going to be an enormous surge in consumer spending. And all those restaurants are going to want to reopen and rehire their folks. It's just a function of getting past the virus. And that's the big key. That's the big difference. These are not job losses. These are job furloughs.
Right.
Now,
big difference there.
A big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. Now go to the next step. Because you say, well, or you say no one's going to get hurt. No, of course people are suffering right now.
Mm-hmm.
You have households that don't have a lot of savings, that just lost their source of income, who are going to be pushed right to the edge, if you will, from a financial standpoint. You have small businesses. You have restaurants who, again, maybe weren't doing too well. Suddenly, they have to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
These companies are at risk of going bankrupt. Now, if we allow this shutdown to have an enormous negative impact on the economy, it can create a long-run disruption that we'll have to recover from. That's where government comes in. And it's interesting because, you think about the Great Recession that began technically in December of 2007,
Mm-hmm.
yet to be honest, people didn't even acknowledge we were in a recession until the 3rd quarter of 2008. And the first drop of stimulus spending didn't actually happen until the end of 2008, 2/3 of the way through the recession.
Right. Yeah.
Congress, within weeks, has passed a $2 trillion stimulus package. Now, I'm not saying everything in the stimulus package is good. I mean, some of it's just weird, wonky. There's definitely a lot of pork in there.
Yeah.
And the idea you're going to send every American a $1,200 check when, by the way, the problem is that they're not allowed to spend money right now.
Yeah.
That seems a little odd to me. But let's put aside that for a second and let's acknowledge the other parts that are good. And there are a lot of good parts here, okay? For example, you have a big expansion of the unemployment insurance benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Critically necessary for those people who've been furloughed from their jobs, who need to get through the next few tough weeks or maybe month and a half. This is going to help them. The Small Business Administration has been given a whole big bunch of money, which they can go out and start making loans to small businesses to help them through these tough times. There's an enormous lending window being opened up through the Federal Reserve on the basis of $500 billion being given to them by the Federal Reserve. And that money is going to be able to go into short-term finance to, again, make sure the credit markets don't seize up and create unnecessary damage to the economy.
Right.
There's all sorts of provisions in here that will help us get through the next few tough weeks. And of course, even locally, we're doing that. At the state level, they're deferring state taxes, for example. They put a limitation on whether or not landlords can start enacting an eviction proceeding right now if you don't pay your rent for a couple of months. Mm-hmm. These are things that are giving people a little space, giving them a little leeway, again, as we work through these hard couple weeks. Even the private sector is getting involved. You look at what the Irvine company is doing in Orange County right now. They're an enormous landlord, right? They've told all their retail tenants that you can take 3 months off without paying your rent as long as you make good by the beginning of 2021, interest penalty free. You'll give you 3 months. So again, these are all the kind of things we need to do to make sure we can get through, again, these next few tough weeks.
Right.
So it's good news. It really is. We're handling it the way we can. And the best thing I can tell everybody to do, if I had to give some advice to folks, is twofold. One, just hang in there, right? You're going to get through this. This is not that long of a period, right? We can and you just need to pay attention, look at the programs that are available to you. And the second thing is, don't let the hysteria get into your head.
Yeah. Because
again, the economy is fundamentally sound. It's the soundest it's been in 30 years. If there's ever a time we can handle this, it's right now. So it's a tough few weeks. It's going to be a tough second quarter. You're going to take a hit to your pocketbook. but we're going to get through this. And our guess is by the end of the year, we're going to be made whole.
Yeah, and you made a couple of good points there. One is that, you couldn't have asked a better time for this to happen, and if you look at it from that standpoint, because our economy was, as they say, firing on all cylinders still. Right. So we're in a good place in that regard. The one interesting part too is to your point is that with the expansion of the unemployment benefits, one advantage that we get here in California is that anybody that is either a sole proprietor or self-employed, 1099 employee, whatever you want to call it, there's no coverage in unemployment insurance unless you've paid into it, right. Which none of them do. But with the CARES Act, now there's actually expanded coverage within that for a huge group of people that would never get any coverage in the state.
Exactly.
Which is huge, and I don't think a lot of people even understand the impact that that'll have for our state specifically. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. So
yeah.
So anything else that people should be kind of keeping an eye out for, currently?
Well, again, right now it's going to be sort of day by day tracking what's happening in terms of the number of new cases. I know they continue to rise. Everybody expected them to. In economics jargon, we say pay attention to the second derivative. It's not the fact that we're getting new cases, it's the pace of getting new cases. And that doesn't look all that scary, believe it or not. Another good thing to keep an eye on is just basically the hospitals. Unlike New York or Seattle, hospitals in California are okay right now. They're not being overrun with people. And then again, that's a good sign. It says all their efforts we're making are paying off, that we're getting in front of this at some level. You got to pay attention to what they're telling you to do. If they're saying stay home, stay home. I understand it's tough, but you're not doing anybody any favors by not listening to our public health professionals.
Yeah. I like to say that we got to flatten the curve.
Yes.
Got to say it. So
got to flatten the curve. Exactly.
Very
right.
Good. So if anyone wants to connect more with kind of what you're doing, your work with the work at the UCR School of Business Center and Economic Forecasting and Development, where can they kind of find any more information out about that? UCRforecast.com will take you right to our personal webpage. And of course, from there, you can find all the wonderful resources at UC Riverside. It's an interesting time. And we're going to learn a lot. It's interesting. Even the technologies we have available to us today, like for example, doing this on Zoom. Yep. In a lot of ways, we have resources available to us today, which maybe are helping us weather the storm a little better than we might otherwise. I would completely agree with that, and we were talking about that on our staff level this past week of. These are all tools that we've had at our fingertips and we have not taken advantage of. Right. And but I think that a lot of us now are looking at our businesses saying is that we probably won't ever do business quite the same because of these types of things. So, and you see it constantly right now, especially with small and mid-sized businesses, is that having to innovate, to adapt to your current circumstances. And I think that is. This is a perfect example of that. So, yeah. And I'll tell you something else, too, because one person asked me, they said, well, do you think that people are going to really get used to working from home and office space, demand for office space is going to collapse? To which I said, actually, quite the opposite. I'm pretty sure no one's going to want to work at home anymore after this. We are all ready to go back to the office. That's right. So, quarantine virus, a virus quarantine, putting the fun back into work. Yeah, so, that's right. Very good. Well, Dr. Thornberg, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for doing this with us, and maybe in the not too distant future, we'll have a chance to do this again. So I hope so, Patrick. I definitely do, and I'm glad your chamber is helping your members out by keeping them informed and everything that's going on. Great. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.